So we are past the halfway mark, and I keep hearing people say the year is done. It is not. The rest of 2026 is packed. Series coming back from the dead, studios swinging at things they have never tried, sequels people stopped believing in, 30 games, all expected before the year runs out. And here is the part that gets me. Some of these are going to be enormous. Oh, this one. Beast of Reincarnation is Game Freak building a full action RPG, and it looks nothing like what you expect from the Pokemon studio. A ruined, ash choked Japan, a mutt at your side that grows as you push deeper, combat that swaps between beast forms mid fight. I need to see it whole for 30 hours before I call it, but that art direction already has me. Marvel Tōkon. Fighting Souls is Arc System Works getting handed Earth's mightiest heroes, and that is a sentence I did not expect to say. 4 versus 4 tag battles, hand drawn, so every hit lands like a comic panel in motion. The studio behind Guilty Gear and Dragon Ball Fighters does not miss on feel. My worry is roster size, because a game like this lives or dies on who made the cut. Resonance. A Plague Tale Legacy is where Asobo stops playing it safe. 2 games of Rats and Grief and a sister carrying too much build to something, and now they're following that thread past where Amicia's story closed. Look, the first 2 earned my trust completely, so I am not worried about the writing. I am watching the tone. If they hold it, this ends up the strongest of the 3. You are going to hear a lot about Star Wars Zero Company, and here is why that is deserved. Turn-based squad tactics set during the Clone Wars, built by people who worked on XCOM with a custom commander and a squad that can die permanently and stay dead. Star Wars has handed me plenty of power fantasies. It has never handed me that particular kind of dread. The Blood of Dawnwalker has the sharpest hook on this list. You are half vampire in a plague-struck 14th century valley, human through the day, something far worse after dark, and the whole story runs on a clock that never stops for you. Choose where your hours go. Miss things forever. X-Witcher leads are steering it, and that structure either sings or it falls apart. I am betting on sings. Onimusha Way of the Sword is Capcom finally digging up one of its best series after 2 decades in the ground. Early Edo period Kyoto, demons in the streets, and a swordsman whose face you will recognize the second you see him move. This is not a Souls-like. It is deliberate, brutal, single-strike combat with a demon gauntlet feeding on what you kill. Capcom has earned this one. Marvel's Wolverine is the game Insomniac has been quietly sharpening while everyone watched Spider-Man, Logan in Madripoor, and the studio is not softening him. What I keep coming back to is how the combat has to work. Because Wolverine cannot web away from a fight, he walks in, gets hurt, keeps going. Get that loop right, and this becomes the most vicious thing Sony has published in years. Control Resonant is the sequel I have been waiting on since Jesse walked into the oldest house. Remedy makes games that no other studio would greenlight, and that is exactly why this matters. Shifting architecture, bureaucracy as horror, and that dry deadpan running underneath all of it. My only real question is scope. Remedy swinging bigger has never been the safe bet. It has usually been the right one. Silent Hill, Townfall is no code being handed the keys. And the thing is, that pairing makes total sense. These are the people behind Stories Untold and Observation who build dread out of interfaces and silence rather than monster closets. Nothing about this looks like the Silent Hill you remember. Here is what I mean. That might be the healthiest thing that could happen to the series. Rayman Legends Retold brings back the best 2-dimensional platformer of the last 15 years, and I am not being generous with that. The original was absurd. Hand-painted, perfectly timed, with music levels that turned platforming into rhythm. Rebuilt now with new content on top. Look, Ubisoft has plenty to answer for lately, but letting Rayman back out of the vault is the correct decision. Ace Combat 8 is the return I stopped expecting. 7 came out years ago, sold absurdly well, and then the series went quiet. Project Aces builds dogfights nobody else builds, where the plane feels heavy and the radio chatter carries more story than most cutscenes. Give me one impossible canyon run and one opera swell over a missile lock and I am gone. That is the whole formula. Star Wars Galactic Racer is the pitch that sells itself before you see a frame. Pod racing has sat untouched since 1999, and the game built around it is still the one people bring up whenever racing and Star Wars land in the same sentence. So the bar is set and everyone knows where it is. Nail the sense of speed and the wrongness of steering something that fast, and this works. Castlevania. Belmont's curse is Konami remembering what it owns. This series basically invented one half of a genre, then spent years being borrowed from by everyone else while sitting on the shelf. Here is the thing, the name still carries weight, the whip still feels like nothing else, and a straight, mean, gothic action game does not need reinvention. It needs someone to take it seriously again. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 arrives carrying more baggage than any other game here. The last few years have been rough on this series, and everyone knows it. But the reality is, when the campaign lands, nothing else in the genre moves like it. And the Modern Warfare name is the one they cannot afford to fumble. I am not optimistic. I am still going to be watching on day one. Phantom Blade Zero is the one that has been teasing us since 2023 and still has not blinked. Kung Fu Punk, wuxia combat built on parries that come faster than you can think, and a studio going all in on making it look like nothing else on the market. Every trailer has held up. What I need now is a release date and 30 hours to prove the combat has depth. Valor Mortis is Tech 13 doing something I did not see coming. Napoleonic era souls like undead soldiers and gunpowder woven into the combat rather than bolted on beside it. These are the people who made Lords of the Fallen, so the pedigree is there. Warhammer 40,000. Dawn of War 4 is a course correction, and let's be real, it needed one. The third game lost the plot, chasing MOBA ideas nobody asked for, and the series went dark for years. Now it is back with base building, real army scale, and relics saying the right things about returning to what worked. Here is what I mean. This is a redemption arc or it is nothing. Gears of War E-Day drags the series back to the worst day in its history, and that is exactly the right call, Emergence Day itself. Marcus and Dom, before any of it hardened them, before the war became routine, the Coalition is stripping this back to horror, which is what the first game actually was underneath the chainsaws. 14 years of prequels, and nobody thought to start here. The Sinking City 2 is Frogwares making a game under conditions almost nobody else is working under, and that context is impossible to ignore. This time they are leaning fully into survival horror instead of detective work, dropping the investigation loop for scarcity and dread. Lovecraft, a drowned city, and a studio with something to prove. The first game had ideas it could not quite afford. This one might. Mortal Shell 2 is the sequel a lot of people forgot to expect. The first one came out of a tiny team and had one idea nobody else had. You are not a body. You are a thing wearing bodies, swapping shells and inheriting whoever died in them. Cold Symmetry built something strange on almost no budget. Give them a real one and this could be the sharpest Souls-like of the year. Minecraft Dungeons 2 is the easiest sell on this entire list. The first one did something the genre needed badly, which was make a loot crawler a 9-year-old and their parent could actually play together without anyone reading a stat sheet. 4-player couch co-op, blocky monsters, gear that drops constantly. Look, it is not deep. It was never trying to be. It just works every single time. Clive Barker's Hellraiser revival. Is Barker himself coming back to the thing he created? And that is why this is not just another license grab. First person, brutally violent, and built around the Lament configuration doing what it has always done, which is punish curiosity. Boss team is going for genuine transgression rather than jump scares. And that matters, because Hellraiser has never worked as a haunted house. Dragon's Dogma 2. Dark Arisen is the fix. The base game had the best combat and the worst structure of anything Capcom shipped that year, and everyone who loved it said the same thing, it needed more. If this follows the pattern of the original Dark Arisen, that means a whole new region, harder enemies, and the endgame the sequel was missing. Itsuno's monsters deserved a better back half. Silver Pines is small, and I keep thinking about it anyway. A quiet town, a disappearance, and horror built out of atmosphere and dread rather than anything chasing you down a corridor. The thing is, the games that actually get under my skin are almost never the loud ones. They are the ones where nothing happens for 20 minutes and you still cannot put the controller down. Planet Zoo 2 is Frontier returning to the one thing they are unmatched at: piece by piece habitat building, animals that behave like animals rather than decorations, and a simulation deep enough that your enclosure design actually changes how they live. The first game ate hundreds of hours from people who thought they did not like management sims. So a sequel with modern tools is not a hard yes, it is an obvious one. Tales of Eternia Remastered is the one Tales fans have been quietly begging for. This game came out on the original PlayStation, never got a proper Western re release, and has spent 2 decades as the entry people tell you to emulate. Real time combat that still holds up, a party you actually care about, and a story about two worlds bound together. Some remasters are cash grabs. This one is a rescue. Halloween is walking into a graveyard of licensed slasher games, and it knows it. Michael Myers is the hardest horror icon to get right because he does not talk, does not run, and does not stop. And that only works if the tension is built properly. Haddonfield, that mask, that theme. Here is the thing: get the pacing right, and this is terrifying. Get it wrong, and it is a costume. Final Fantasy Resonance carries the most loaded name on this list. And let's be real, that cuts both ways. Square Enix has spent years pulling this series in 5 directions at once, and every new entry now arrives with a question attached about what kind of Final Fantasy it actually wants to be. I have stopped predicting, but when they land it, nobody in the genre touches them. Hell let loose. Vietnam takes the most punishing shooter on the market and drops it somewhere the genre keeps flattening into set dressing. 100-player battles, real supply lines, and a death that means walking back rather than respawning behind cover. So the war changes shape completely. Tunnels, tree lines, ambushes from nowhere. This series has never once softened for anybody, and Vietnam is the wrong place to start. Harvest Moon Echoes of Teradea is the series still going after Story of Seasons, walked off with the original team and most of the goodwill. But the reality is, farming sims have never been more crowded, and there is room for something that just does the basics warmly. Plant, tend, build a life somewhere quiet, no urgency, no threat. Some days, that is exactly the game I want to open.